Thanks, and I'll try and live up to that billing. We'll see. Great to be here. Good morning, and thank you to John, Tony, and any other True Ventures people for sponsoring this. It's a great event. I also want to thank True for their support of Fitbit over the years. It was a great experience at Fitbit, but also working with True. And you guys were incredible in terms of supporting us through, as Christian said, the ups and downs, the inevitable ups and downs that come with a fast growth company. My subject today is called Reaching Escape Velocity. And what I really wanted to do is just share my thoughts, maybe some lessons, but more just reflections on what I've seen from Fitbit and some other companies that I've been at that have moved from this stage of having some early traction and then finding their way to mainstream adoption. And I guess the first thing I'd say is early traction and early adoption is great. It is gold. But it's not necessarily what's going to be the path to that bigger market. There's a lot to be learned, and early traction is better than not early traction. But going from that and gleaning the lessons and figuring out what is it you're going to build on there that's going to take you to that next level, that's what really, I think, makes a difference in terms of reaching the potential of the company. Let's see, as I was introduced, so at Fitbit, again, for 6.5 years. When I joined Fitbit, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. That was it. John introduced me to the company. He told me privately, he said, it's a couple guys in an office building. I'm not sure where it's going to go, but it feels like something's happening. So we didn't know it was going to get to 2 billion, but you did know that there was something good happening there. At CamelBack, I was EVP Sales Marketing and Product Development, so I ran the R&D side of things. Again, a product that went from niche to something that was much broader in hydration systems, which are those backpack hydration systems with the tubes you see on cyclists, runners, and others. But we expanded into some pretty mainstream products. So if you see me sipping on this right here, you'll see it's my Visual A, the CamelBack water bottle, which has become a big success as well. GoPro, early days, and then Yakima car racks, which make car racks for skis and bikes and cargo and boats and things like that. What I'd like to talk about today is first talking about Fitbit as a case study, and most importantly, talk about what the core adoption drivers were. That is, what propelled Fitbit from that early stage to the bigger opportunity. And then going into some broader reflections on what does it take, how do you find those adoption drivers, what do you make of the technology adoption curve, and what are some things we can add to that might be useful. How do you look through the range of growth opportunities that you're inevitably inundated with? How do you think about the user experience and its role, especially for early stage connected hardware companies? And then finally, some thoughts on scaling an organization at a pretty fast rate. I want to try and get through this in about 35 minutes. So that can leave us about 20 minutes for Q&A. So if I move fast, we can always return to some things. First on Fitbit, the case study. Again, I joined in 2010. By 2016, we'll just talk quickly about how far the company got to. So again, starting at $5 million to $2.1 billion in sales, from less than 1,000 storefronts to 55,000 storefronts, from less than 100,000 units sold to cumulatively, this number still blows me away, 63 million units sold. How did we do that, John? I don't know. It's amazing. USA only, and couldn't even think about anything outside the US, to actually in 2011 entering some new countries and eventually introducing this weird new idea and weird new product into 65 countries on 6 continents. And then I think something I'm most proud of is to go from Fitbit, which was a brilliant brand name, to a global brand that really resonates with consumers. So that's kind of a sense of what we did. What I wanted to do was reflect on how we got there. And I'm going to take a little trip down memory lane. Let's see who was with us then and who winces. This was the original web page, which I'm going to say is not bad. Not bad. Here it was. They did show people doing fitness-oriented things, asking the key questions. Did I get enough exercise today? How many calories did I burn? Am I getting good rest? Okay. It does talk about some benefits there. But it gets really interesting when we turn to the product page. I'm not sure if people in the back can read this. Some people with distance vision can. So I'm going to read it because I just love the copywriting here. The Fitbit accurately tracks your calories burned, steps taken, distance traveled, and sleep quality. Okay, that's what it does. The Fitbit contains a 3D motion sensor like the one found in the Nintendo Wii. Yes, it does. The Fitbit tracks your motion, this is my favorite, in 3 dimensions and converts this into useful information about your daily activities. In the world of consumer benefits, taking data and turning it into useful information about your daily activities is not way up there in terms of what I've seen consumers want. So the question is, how do we go from this thing, to transforming the way people think about fitness? And John Callahan's incredible brilliance to realize that this thing could sire a business that would sell 63 million devices. Let me just open it up to any thoughts on what it was from here. How did we get from here to the big idea? What was the big idea for Fitbit that got us there? Anyone want to throw out an idea? Yeah.
Does it make it fashionable?
Eventually.
Okay, that was later.
Later. Yeah, Nick.
Go aspirational, kind of paint a lifestyle picture and reach beyond just the features, but more like a life.
That was kind of the how, but it's still, yes, we did that. That was kind of the how and the style, but not the what. Anybody? Any other ideas? Okay. So I think this is one of the big lessons I got out of Fitbit and other companies I've been at. How do you take something, inevitably we think about product features, and if we're good, we think about the benefits of those features. It does this so it's faster, it does this so it's better. Okay, yeah. But when we're introducing something that is a novel category, that people don't know what to do with, okay, yeah, it tracks distance, yes, it does this. I think the most useful question that we asked ourselves was so what? So who cares? Well, when we dug a little deeper, we found Fitbit shows me how active I am, holds me accountable. Okay, that's feeling a little more like it's important to people. So we said, so what? What does that matter? Why does that matter? Well, it motivates me to move more during my busy life. Okay, so it's doing something to change my activity, change what I do, but still, why is that interesting to people? And we got to, Fitbit enables me to be healthy and fit even though I'm really busy. Okay? Now, let me expand upon that a little bit. So when I got there, I said, why, we have early traction, sales are, tripling month on month, what's happening? And I heard there are a lot of data-obsessed people out there who are buying our product. Okay, that sounds like early adopters. There are a lot of really fit people who like to track their stuff. Okay, yeah, triathletes like to do that. I'm not sure steps, distance, and calories is what triathletes want to do. They're just young early adopters. Well, so we did a little quick data analysis of what our user base, our initial sales were about. And then we went out and talked to those people. We found that instead of 25-year-old early adopters, we were selling to 38-year-old people whose BMI was about 28, which is overweight but not obese. It was more female than male. And when we talked to them, they said, there are a lot of answers, and some were the early adopters that like data and all that. But when we talked to them, what they came back and said, this little thing does motivate me, and it gets me to do more than I normally would. And I fit these moments of fitness into my life. And, I thought I couldn't be fit because I don't go to the gym 3 to 5 days a week, because that was the definition of fitness about 10 years ago. You have to do something intense for X number of days. But I find that when I fit these moments of exercise in, they add up to something. And despite my busy life with kids and work and school and family, I can actually be fit. And so what started to kind of coalesce was this whole new vision of fitness. That this thing could turn somebody's everyday life into a path to fitness. So yes, it did all those things, but what it was doing was changing someone's life in a way they really cared about. And while that may sound pretty obvious now that we all think about fitness as more holistic and everyday, and everything you do can add up to fitness, that wasn't obvious at all. When people thought fitness electronics, they thought Nike. They thought performance. They thought peak of the pyramid type stuff. And we were addressing, at first, more the soccer mom, more the bottom of the pyramid, in a way that was really meaningful and transformative to them. So, spent a lot of time on this, but I want to go through. It changed our mission. It changed it to this. Fitbit, instead of just doing something, tracking data, giving you the power of data. No, it empowers you to lead a healthier, more active life. Yes, by providing you data, inspiration, and guidance to reach your goals. But it was really there to change your life. The result was great. We started 1 million the first year, 5 million, which is a 5x, 14 million, which is 2.8x, then a big year, 76 million. We were off to the races, right, John? Then 271 million, 3.6x. I mean, these are big growth numbers per year. Then this was a big one. We started, expanded our distribution. I'll go through that, and started some television advertising here. Huge year here. That was our public year. 2.5x to almost 1.9 billion. And then last year, slower growth, but still up to 2.2 billion. And that was 1.2x. Distribution followed that insight. And I think that's what I wanted to share. It sounds like, okay, Fitbit turns your everyday life into a path to fitness. That sounds like a marketing communications thing. I guess what I'm here to tell you is no. That was a core understanding of how the product was going to change people's lives. And that got us thinking not just about marketing message, but about what the product needed to do. So instead of just a little clippy thing here, we started thinking, oh, what are some more popular ways? Because it changed our mind about how big this could be. It changed our mind about who we were talking to. It changed our mind about what the product should be. It changed our mind, therefore, about what the messages should be, what the brand should be. Instead of thinking about a performance brand like Nike, we started thinking, no, these people aren't trying to see what they can't do. These people want to see what they can do. So we developed the Fitbit brand to embody that benefit. It's accessible, friendly, encouraging. You can do this. A little cheeky. It's not taking itself too seriously. That's what the Fitbit brand became because of this insight. The distribution, where we went, showing up here, starting with Best Buy, great early adopter channel, and Amazon early on, yes, but still just skimming the surface. Brookstone, early adopter channel. REI was kind of a random thing. There are lots of random opportunistic things that came along. Target, early on, we wanted to get there. We had an incredible opportunity when our competitor, starts with a J, dropped the ball, and we were able to slide in there, probably earlier than we normally would have, but jumped on it, seized the shelf space, and then expanded from there. Verizon and AT&T, because we finally had an app, but then getting into broader distribution with sporting goods, Walmart, QVC, but the one that really blew me away was this. Okay, how many people know what Kohl's is? Okay, how many people here shop at Kohl's? Okay, We got a couple, more than I expected. I'd never been in Kohl's. And when I told our sales team, Kohl's knocking on the door, let's talk to them. They're like, not Kohl's. It's pretty middle brow. Sorry, guys. And discount oriented. And it actually, but these guys were persistent. And they kept tugging at our ankle. And they came in and they said, we know that we can sell this product. We said, well, you're a clothing-oriented store. What? You have a small consumer electronics department. Why do you think? They said, well, you guys are about empowering women, especially, to be more active. We're all about active lifestyles. And by the way, Fitbit was the #1 failed search on our site last Christmas. I'm like, WTF? So all of a sudden, our sales force got religion on that one. And they actually became a great partner and really invested with us. Lots to talk about on distribution for those of you in the hardware business. But most importantly, it followed generally a path of adoption. So early adopter to later adopter. But the thing that most people either don't understand or don't fully get is that getting in the door was the first step, but only the first step. It took a lot of work, a lot of investment, a lot of POP, point of purchase displays, and a lot of thinking through where we wanted to go and how we wanted to get there. These are just a channel. These are not the end user. We know that, but sometimes we forget that. Okay, you sell into Target, and that's the beginning of your job because, in effect, you're responsible for selling it through to the end consumer. So you need to accept that as your job. International, and beyond, then we got even broader with Macy's and Bed Bath & Beyond and things like that. Who would have ever thought when we started out here that this was going to go into Nordstrom or Macy's or Kohl's? None of us. So that gets back to the mentality you have to have, which is we explored and tried. These are our greatest hits. I'm not going to put our greatest failures up there, but they're there as well. Internationally, I got there and no one wanted to talk about international, and I just knew from prior lives that one definite, there's no good time to think about international, and there never will be. There's just never. There's always things that you got to do, and we got to do. We don't have time. It's too much. Yeah. And sure, languages, you have to be strategic about it and all that. But we jumped off the cliff in 2011, and within 6 months, we launched the product in the UK. A couple months later, we were in Germany, France, and Spain, and it became. It's now, I think, projected to be about 40% of the business. It took a while to get there, and took an investment and great people leading it along the way. But we went from the US to the UK, to Germany, France, Spain, and pretty early on, Australia, Switzerland. I'm sure everybody knows that flag there. People know this flag, of course. It's Hong Kong, Singapore, yeah. Sweden, right? Okay. Norway. Yeah, okay. Mexico. Come on. India. Okay, this is a tough one. Belgium? Yeah, good. Okay. And along the way, building a great brand, which really came out of that original finding, which was, what are we really doing for people? How are we changing their life? And it ended up showing up on these surveys of consumers about most loved brands, most dynamic brands in the world, judged by consumers and things like that. Then there are those moments, those magical moments with a brand and a consumer hardware company, when someone's using it and you just go, wow. This guy started using it, and damn it, he kept using it. Here he is, an NBA game, and then my favorite, in comedians getting coffee with, no, comedians in cars getting coffee?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I couldn't believe it. I don't know how it got to him. Don't ask me how it got to them. I have full deniability. It's just, this shit happens sometimes. So that's a little bit about Fitbit, but I wanted to back up now and just think about between Fitbit, CamelBack, GoPro to some extent, what are some lessons or some reflections? I don't want to call them lessons, it sounds too formal, and I haven't done a comprehensive survey of other companies that have gone from niche to mainstream, but let's just talk about some reflections. So I talked about this, which is to find the core adoption driver. And it really comes down to, when you're working on a product and working on a company, and you may have started out kind of up here and thinking generally, yeah, these are the needs we're serving. And then we kind of, because of the drive and the need and the focus and all that, you're really close to it and you're driving and it's all about product features and benefits and all that stuff. But pulling back and continuing to remind yourself, what are these drivers? And it's really asking some basic questions, which are, who's it for and why? Okay? There's a great quote. This is more on just from the advertising side, but I think it speaks to the product side and the whole business vision side as well. It's a guy named Leo Burnett, who was one of the founding fathers of advertising in the 20th century, last century. And he said, there is an inherent drama in every product. This is when he's trying to find the big idea. He said, our number one job is to dig for it and to capitalize on it. So what he meant was, there's a turning point that happens with each product. And you got to think through what it's doing for people and how it's going to change something they're doing. And what he's kind of saying is that any successful product is really a story. And the story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning is, okay, so what's the problem? And what's the setting? What are the, what's going on in someone's life? The middle is, what's the problem? What's the drama? What's the climactic point where they're not able to do something? And of course, the end is how your product can really fulfill that vision. So it's really, what mainstream need does it serve? But the way I've found in just talking to some of John's companies and some of the others is really almost a more basic question, which you can ask of your product. Again, if it's a consumer-facing product or an end-user-facing product in the enterprise, and that's this. So keep asking yourself this. How will it change someone's life? So if you're thinking about talking to somebody face-to-face, I think you need to be able to answer this question. You need to be able to describe to them not just what the product does, what category it's in, what its features are, what the benefits of those features are. No, they're not in the business of learning about your product. They're in the business of doing something that's meaningful to them. And so it sounds really basic, but it's so easy to lose track of. You have to keep asking yourself, how will it change someone's life? What's interesting, again, going back to why this is important, is, again, that core driver, why it's going to change someone's life, then branches off and drives your whole business strategy. Once we found that this thing was addressing a mainstream audience with a need they could never solve, which is, I'm busy, but I can't be fit, I can't be healthy, but now there's this product that comes along and reminds me to be more active and gets me more fit. And now we're addressing a big market with a big benefit and something. Okay, so it led to, yeah, of course, the message changed. The brand became something that it wasn't before. The product started to become something. So we started more broadly about the product. The product, not just the form factor, but it wasn't just about counting steps and kind of tracking sleep. It became, people that want to lead a healthy life. Healthy life, as they define it, was being more active, getting more exercise, eating smarter, sleeping better, managing their weight, and being healthier mentally and emotionally. Those were 6 pillars that became, okay, Fitbit helping you lead a healthier life. So it led to some of our app features, some of our hardware products like our Scal and things like that. We wanted to be that path to a healthier life. It certainly changed our marketing plan, who we were talking to, how we were talking to them. It changed our sales and distribution channels, as you guys saw. And it really changed our vision for what the business potential could be. Suddenly, this thing could be big, as opposed to this niche-y thing that, yeah, is going from 1 million to 5 million, but how big could it be? Now we started thinking, oh no, 90% of the people out there we can talk to. Now I want to talk a little broadly about how we thought through some of the stages of growth. I imagine most people here are familiar with the technology adoption curve. In researching this, I was fascinated because these are very precise statistics. And I was wondering, how could they be so precise about the fact that there are 2.5% in any market that were innovators versus early adopters? And I don't know if people know this, but this was actually developed not as a technology adoption curve, but as a product adoption curve. And if Wikipedia is right, and I'm sure it always is, this was developed for different strains of corn in the Midwest in 1960. Different adoption by different kinds of farmers with different mentalities about who's willing to take on different strains of. So take it all with a grain of salt. However, I do believe in this strongly, and I think it has some very, very interesting implications. And these, okay, fine, that was the original. And I've seen markets and some companies I'm talking to now where I think this is actually a lot bigger because of some factors. So I think this can change, but I think the general foundation is a good thing to keep in mind. But I thought a little bit about this, and I think there are additional ways to think through the different stages. And some of them are really common sense. One is the awareness of need. So the innovators typically have a very high awareness of this need, the basic need that you're solving. And it tends to go down from there. Early adopters, a high, I'd say early majority moderate, but there. I call late majority latent awareness of it. It's there below the surface, and part of the job is to bring it to the surface and make them aware of something that's going to make them aware of the need and therefore interested in your product. And then the laggards, they're just resistant. You got to do a lot to convince them. Okay, that's pretty basic. What's the motivation that goes with that? Innovators, I think, are driven by curiosity, okay? Which is one of the reasons that early traction may or may not be a good guide to what the big opportunity is down the road. Early adopters clearly know they need something. Their need awareness is high, and so they are looking for a solution. They want it, and that's why bottom of the funnel digital marketing can be effective. It can be a big part of your plan or a little part of the plan, depending on how well that need is recognized. But that's still just the early adopter stage. Here is where it gets interesting. And I'm taking a little license here, but I tend to think of early majority as people, because they're moderately aware of the need and they're early adopter types, they're driven by this hope for a solution. And what I mean by that is they want to find a solution. So they may be giving you the benefit of the doubt. They may not need that clinical proof or the economic study that proves something, but maybe it's enough to tell them how your product solves the need rather than prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it does solve the need. A little bit of art here, but certainly they're more interested in the solution. They want to give you the benefit of the doubt. I think hope is a relevant thing there. Late majority, you need to convince them they need it. And when you get out to laggards, it may be a requirement. So Obamacare, the ACA may be the only way that laggards about insurance bought it. They had to do it, and they got some assistance. It became a requirement. Then I think this is also interesting. The next category, if you can't see, is what I call acceptable product at the different stages. Yes, it would be wonderful if you had the ultimate product coming out the gates, but I don't think we've ever seen that, okay, whether it's the hardware or the software experience or anything like that. So the fact is that people at the early stage are going to give you a lot more slack. They're going to cut you more slack. You put a tool out there, they're going to figure out how to use that tool. In the early adopter stage, I call it the toolkit approach. You're giving a series of tools, and they're pretty motivated, and they know they have a need, and they're going to find a way to kind of put it together into a solution. But, and this is a big but, it's different from here on out. It's really different. This is a solution, and this is a fully integrated solution. What I mean by that is they don't want to learn how to build the watch to tell what time it is. Okay? They want you to have put things together in a way that delivers that core need that you've attracted them with. Okay? So it's a lot about the experience. It's a lot about showing them a personalized path to where they want to get to. And out here, yeah, fully supported means it's more than just giving them that solution. I think it's about supporting them in any way they need to get there. So, the thing about Fitbit, I feel like Fitbit got about halfway through this. That's where I think Fitbit is. You can look at it mathematically, and because these stats are so precise, Fitbit has said publicly, and I'm just sharing public information here with you guys today, that they believe they penetrated 15 to 20% of adults in the US, and that 65% perhaps are interested in health and fitness and have a smartphone. So call it the TAM for that. So that's about a third. Okay, yeah, mathematically, again, because that's so precise, we're right here. I think, James Park has talked about how do we make Fitbit into a need? Okay, that comes over here. I think about the acceptable product, and the question is, has Fitbit become a real solution, or is it still a toolkit? And I know the company has talked about services and things like that and where they're working on that. So, if you were to say, does Fitbit today and its product suite really give someone a full solution to reaching their personalized health and fitness goals? I don't think I'm out of bounds in saying, probably not today. There are a lot of tools to get there, and they're starting to put it together in a way that is a fully integrated solution that helps me get to that goal, whatever my goal is. But I wouldn't say, and I don't think the company would say, they're really fully there in terms of that fully integrated solution. So I think, again, just a little more proof point that I think this can start to be a good guide to what companies should think about at different stages and perhaps what their product could be. Again, somebody once said, yeah, but wouldn't it be better to have a full solution here? Absolutely. I'm just saying there's more of a tolerance. You can get by with something here that you can't get by with out there. That's the real lesson there. Prioritizing growth opportunities. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. Two companies, Fitbit and CamelBack, both started out as consumer-focused companies, and yet were able to find some pretty interesting other businesses. And so prioritizing growth opportunities is a huge topic and subject of lots of analysis and thinking and all that. I just want to give you a couple thoughts on that. I don't want to go into processes and rating different opportunities. That's a whole different topic. But two very specific things. Number one, the consumer's consumerization of the enterprise is a really interesting thing for connected hardware companies, which means products that started out as consumer products making their way into B2B applications. And that makes sense. I mean, we're a much more consumer-driven world than we were 10 years ago. So with with CamelBack, we started out in this market. Do you know what the biggest market for CamelBack became when we sold the company? Pardon me? Military. Became this. Okay? Who'd have thunk it, right? And I'll tell you how we got there. So it started out here, and this became a great business, and it still is, and it, generated some very interesting new products. But based on deployments to the Middle East, based on what the product was and could be, we recognized a really interesting opportunity. And I'll tell you how it happened. This is going back a long time. This is 20 years ago. Oh my God. 20 years ago. I was on the board of CamelBack, and I was working closely with the sales and marketing team. And we were selling the consumer product into the sports division of an account called AFES, Army Air Force Exchange Services, which is basically the mass merchant on base at Army and Air Force bases. Okay? It's like a Walmart there. It was in the sporting goods section. All of a sudden, we saw that sales were taking off. And we thought, it's great. It's great. We're selling a lot to people in the military who are taking them on bike rides and runs and hikes and things like that. And then we did a little more research, and we found that's not what was going on. That enlisted people, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds who are not being overpaid, were using their own money to buy a $40 product that they were sneaking into their battle pack for a 30-mile road march, which is what one of their basic training episodes was. And it was not only not standard equipment, it was not allowed, it was actively banned. You were supposed to have 2-liter canteens. You're supposed to drink when they told you to drink, and you were supposed to conserve water because you're going to need it later. And one of the drivers for CamelBack was actually we were a better way to hydrate when you're on the move. We actually allowed you to perform better, and that was our core need. And what we realized was that these guys had figured out that by sneaking this into their battle pack, they could have 2 liters of water, easily accessible, kept cool, drinking on the move, drinking continuously, and they were doing better. And so that was where we said, holy cow, what if we actually made a product for them? What if we got people who knew how to excite interest within the military? What if we figured out a new way to sell to the military, taking advantage of this? And we did. We pioneered a whole way to sell products ground up into the military instead of top down. It became standard issue for the US Marine Corps and Army and Air Force and British Marines and Australian Marines and basically every allied country in the world. On Fitbit, of course, we started out thinking about consumers, but it became actually one of the top corporate wellness companies in the country. And what happened was some early people saw the product for consumers and started contacting us and said, I'd like to give these to my employees. And so, yeah, sure, that's great. We're going to sell 200 here. It's a bulk sale. That's great. And then we paused and we said, that's okay, that's nice, but what's really happening here? What's the core driver of that? We realized was, hey, corporate wellness, what they're trying to do is get their employees healthier, build a community, change the culture of the company. And so we really realized there's a whole corporate wellness opportunity. Again, that insight led to finding people who knew it, staffing up a corporate wellness department, building software layers that let it work as a corporate wellness product and integrated into corporate wellness programs. What I'm describing is this. These are ankle biters. And so when we talk about prioritizing growth opportunities, what I mean by that was focus is really important, absolutely. But as you're pioneering a new category and you haven't figured everything out, you're going to get bombarded by people saying, oh my God, I can use your product for this. We got people at Fitbit, John may remember this, who wanted to put it on cows because by putting it on cows, I think they were going to figure out when they were most fertile, or there was something that was going to tell them because of what they were doing. We didn't follow up on that. But ankle biters are those things that even though they're not your main focus, they keep tugging at your ankle. And every once in a while, just be aware of how big those tugs are and how many tugs you get. Once in a while you look down and you say, that's a pretty big dog down there. What if we actually paid a little attention to it? So I say don't forget the ankle biters. I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. Importance of the user experience. Well, that's a real news flash. Gee, the user experience is important, right? Okay. And delivering on the product's promise is critical to the product's and business success. Yeah, duh, right? However, I think it's worth realizing that for connected products, it's especially important. And what it means is positive CSAT does a lot of great things. Of course it does great word of mouth. Of course it means positive reviews. Yeah, then it leads to the upsell, and it sets the base for subscription sales and replacements. In some ways, that's like, yeah, we get it. But I think it really comes down to, but then what are you doing about it? So how do you think about your user experience is, I think, a really important thing. And what I mean by that is, do you think about it as, yeah, a smart but generally standalone experience that you're not really manicuring? Or do you think about it as something that is deeply engaging, where you're watching all those engagement and retention stats and you're figuring out the tweaks that are going to keep people, because that indicates value, that indicates where you're really making a difference and where you're delivering on that core benefit. And so all I'm saying here is, yeah, if you want great CSAT, then become obsessive about the retention and engagement of your product. Finally, I think this is the last section, scaling your organization. And seeing a bunch of companies grow quickly, and we used to talk about Fitbit being almost a new company every year. I mean, a $15 million company is different from a $75 million company, which is different from a $270 million company, which is different from a $745 million company. They're different companies. So change is inevitable, and I think something to realize is it's healthy. And really, if you're on that path of growth, preparing for it and seeing it and realizing what it means is really important. What I mean by that is, if you're a startup and especially a pioneer in a new area, you're building something from scratch. Your focus is really improv, really. You're figuring stuff out. There's no playbook, there's no operating manual. It's doing things quickly. People are getting off on the buzz and the mission, and that's really what's driving people to work insane hours. And really at that point, you're attracting generalists because there are lots of things to be done, and people get a buzz out of being part of that team that's doing everything and maybe doing everything together. When you get to be a later stage innovator, and this doesn't mean a bureaucratic company, it just means a later stage company, the scale and the risks are bigger. And on the one hand, you say, oh, here it is, big logy company. Well, some of it's inevitable, not loginess, but the fact is the size of the risks are bigger. And they're not just your risks. They're the risks of everybody who depends upon you. And I'm not just talking about employees. If you're like Fitbit, all of a sudden, if a product's late, it wasn't just, we're a private company and John's a very forgiving guy, and so, we're going to get through this and we have plenty of cash. Right, John? Right. Okay. All of a sudden, the people whose faith we were building up, the buyer at Target, who was counting on this to make his or her holiday sales, and by the way, make his or her annual bonus. The supplier at Flextronics, who had gone out on a limb for us and maybe even extended some interesting credit terms to us, all of a sudden, they're not getting what they need. And so the risks and the scale are bigger, and that makes you think differently, and it should. All of a sudden, operational predictability, rather than just improvisation, does become more important, and it should. Coordination, inevitably, which can become a problem unto itself, but making sure that it's no longer 10 people talking to each other in the same room and shouting across. It's true coordination. You're starting to recruit people who may not be just driven by the buzz or the mission. Maybe they're still driven by the mission. Late in the game, most people who joined Fitbit were driven by the mission. But it's less about the buzz and more about, hey, their pride in their professional skills and bringing professional skills and being able to scale, let's say, operations smoothly, or bringing new skills in digital marketing to Fitbit, or new skills in market research. That was a little bit more of it. And inevitably, generalists make way for more specialists. And it's just, I think, an inevitable and good evolution. So, but throughout that, yeah, the skill sets can grow and change. To me, I would say to all of you guys, I said this to my team when I left, I think the one thing that always drove us and drove success was initiative, was people anywhere in the organization. Whatever drove us forward, it was people taking the initiative. And either figuring something out or really coming up with a new idea and supporting it and being courageous about it. Yeah, sometimes they didn't get to do it, but the things that we did get to do were all from somebody taking the initiative. It was rarely a top-down driven thing. So I guess what I'd say is, you think about your company's culture, and some of these books on company culture and disruptors and all that say, okay, some companies are pirates, right? Some companies are the Navy, right? In the old days, you might have said Salesforce was here and Oracle was here. Well, I think these guys may have Salesforce written on them these days over here. I think differently. I think in this kind of company and the kind of stage that true companies are, the sort of mentality is neither this, which you outgrow fairly quickly, and certainly not that, but I think it's something different, and that's what I call the explorer. The explorer, if you think back, is really that group of people who's going out there, and they're prepared. They kind of know what they're doing. They've got support, but they're going over the horizon. They don't know what's there. They kind of have a theory, but they have a mentality that says we're going to figure this out, and we're going to learn and have that joy of discovery, and invent something, not just a product. Maybe it's a whole way of going to market, like we did with the military and Fitbit, or new ankle biters that come along, and you're pivoting along the way. But that's the key thing: is self-awareness and confidence and joy of discovery and becoming an explorer. And I think Fitbit all along the way had that mentality, which led us to expand globally, to change our product from a niche to a real mainstream product, to figure out how to differentiate ourselves, and just all the things. It was all based on initiative, and it was all based on having that kind of explorer mindset. So that's what I've got in terms of prepared things. It's a little longer than I wanted, so I hope that was in some way helpful. And now why don't we turn to any questions that might be out there. Any questions? Sure.
I have a question about placing that idea in consumers' minds.
Yeah.
They actually had this problem with health and wellness.
Uh-huh.
And how much of that you ascribe to your specific marketing campaign you did at Fitbit?
Yeah.
How much you ascribe to fitness becoming more popular as a whole?
Uh-huh.
You might have leveraged things like just, Americans are getting fat, and here's a good tool into your campaign. Because people didn't just by accident start searching for Fitbit on the Kohl's website. That was placed in their head.
For sure. And that was later in the game. So that was 2013. I think that was actually holiday of 2012 when they would have done that. And yeah. So a couple thoughts there. The question was, if I can summarize it, tell me if I've got this. How much of it was that we were kind of riding along on a wave, and how much did we take advantage of that wave of consumer desire for more fitness and changing attitudes about fitness? Is that what you're saying? Versus actually going out and creating that need ourselves. Is that?
I guess I was looking for like specifics, like were there any tricks that you had while doing
Yeah.
this where you said, oh, there was this, Department of Health campaign, and we were able to like piggyback on it by web, or like direct
Yeah.
mail was just amazing for us, or something like
Yeah.
that.
So I think what I'd say is having big trends behind you and being the solution to a problem that's rising up is obviously a huge, you've got the wind at your back instead of trying to create, huffing and puffing and trying to create the wind. So for us, it was, yes, there was some more awareness that that people could be walking more, and 10,000 steps was kind of out there, but we magnified it. And what we did was we just said, because remember that PR became a huge part of what Fitbit did. But remember, reporters are not there, and their publications are not there to write about your products. That's just not what they're there for. They're there to write about things that are interesting to their readership. And so to be able to glom onto something and educate them about, actually people think about fitness this way, but let's think about it this way, and small steps can lead to big rewards, and if people can just walk 10,000 steps a day, and all of a sudden that became, okay, hey, everybody out there, we magnified and encouraged that story, and then the more people knew about that, the more our solution made sense. And the same thing with CamelBack, and maybe even more about CamelBack. Hydration, when we really started out, was not known well. People didn't really think about hydration, because this is going back 20 years. That hydration really was so essential to performance and doing active sports. So we always said to ourselves, the more people know about hydration, the better off we'll be. And not just, hey, it's important to hydrate, but here's how you need to hydrate. A little bit, continually, making sure you don't run out of water, and have cool water because your body absorbs it better. That became, okay, so the more people know about that, yeah, hydration is interesting, how to hydrate, and then CamelBack as a solution made a lot more sense. Okay, cool. Brian?
Yeah, you put up a slide that had your greatest hits. Can you tell me about some failures, maybe a time you chased an ankle biter and saw pretty early on, what, this isn't for us? How did you know that was the case?
Yeah, let me take a different example than Fitbit. I'll take CamelBack. So, was this an ankle biter? I guess it was. So we were successful in the military, and we said, okay, so we're helping people who are doing hot jobs, and we're going to be, so where else do people work where heat can lead to heat stress, can lead to either industrial accidents or actually health issues? And so we started thinking about industrial safety. So we thought, okay, real B2B stuff, right? Okay, what if we could put CamelBacks on the backs of people on oil rigs and in oil rigs, wildland fire, things like that. And we did have some success there. And so, because those were the worst offenders, that was a place where heat stress was the biggest issue. And so we started to kind of gear up an industrial safety division. What we didn't understand was that industrial safety, for better or worse, is largely driven by regulation. So the industrial safety manager, what he or she does is what he or she has to do. So if you think about the adoption curve, they're way out here. And we didn't realize that. So it took getting in there. It was tugging at our ankle, and we thought we had some early adopter segments that was going to lead to a much bigger thing. Didn't succeed. Yeah. Hey, back there.
As you transition from early adopter to early majority or majority, obviously the software
Totally. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, the biggest example would be the ARIA scale. The question was, as we scaled from early adopter into early majority or late majority, did we have any challenges on the user experience side? Did we have to change things? Were there any stumbling blocks? Is that fair? Absolutely. So our Wi-Fi scale, which was a Wi-Fi product, Wi-Fi connectivity is especially in a bathroom, which is, again, going back 5 years, people didn't have range extenders. It was a real challenge, and the whole way that it was done was a challenge. So customer support was really important. So I was getting to that, the fully supported solution. But more broadly, I think I was just trying out a product this weekend, which is, so clearly fits this. And I was, so stumbling over the onboarding experience. I mean, they had, about the science section in their app, and they had this and ways to tune it and this. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's a tool, maybe a toolkit, but I'm not here for that. I'm here for that benefit. And this helped me, really, really walk on the onboarding experience step by step. Don't think you're making it too simple. Don't think you're insulting people's intelligence. Confirm things along the way. Yes, here's your next step and all that. And it's. I think that's probably the easiest example, but even every step of the way. So as you introduce a new feature, don't just assume people are going to discover it. Or if they discover it, that they're going to know what it does for them. Keep connecting it back to that the core adoption driver is not something you kind of have an aha on and then you put it on the shelf and you're done. First of all, it keeps evolving because you're addressing different segments as you go. But also, I'll just tell you, there is such an inevitable tendency for people in a company, happen to Fitbit all the time, to say, hey, we already told that story. People already know that about our product. Now let's talk about the product specifics, because we've already told that story. And the reality is, first of all, you're bringing new people into the funnel all the time. They need to know that story. You're probably moving this way, not that way, on the adoption curve, which means they know less about it, the new people coming in, than the old people, right? And you also tend to lose some of the buzz of what you're doing, the bigness of what you're doing when you do that. So I think it's something really to keep in mind. I think we've got a minute or two left, so yeah.
As you grew at Fitbit, how important to the business was that repeat purchasing, retention of existing Fitbit buyers?
Yeah. So the company's yeah. So the company shared some stats on that. The percentage of repeat buyers is growing as a percentage of the total sales. And that's, on the one hand, that's good. On the other hand, what's the denominator here? Are not enough people coming in the top of the funnel, and you're reselling to that. Connected products have the obvious advantage of having owned channels of communication, whether to stimulate the secondary purchase, to find places where it's not such an overt sell. So we sold a lot as each product was introduced. More and more in the early stage was to the installed base, for sure. I would have liked the installed base to be buying more because the products were, because that would have been an indication that we're solving more and more of their needs. So it was a challenge for us sometimes, but got better at both targeting them and converting them as we went along. So how about one more question? Yeah. Yeah. So I think in many companies that would have happened. In Fitbit it didn't, and maybe for a specific reason, idiosyncratic reason, and that's that the company wasn't formed by performance athletes. So James and Eric, who are the co-founders, were not performance athletes. They're computer scientists. Sorry, I didn't repeat the question. The question was, as we evolved, was there pushback in going after a more general market instead of the peak of the pyramid performance athletes? And one of the reasons was the original idea for the product was actually to stimulate James to himself to walk more. So the basic idea was always about walking. And the big idea was to find how to take that basic message and make it big for everybody. I think in a lot of companies, though, that would be the case. And it's a real challenge because the founders might be really wedded to the idea that we're solving the needs of this peak of the pyramid, whether it's performance sports or some other category. And so I think it takes some real flexibility on founders to really be open to that and to think about their company kind of as a living organism and to think about, this is great, but it's actually a good example of how the things that got you here to that early traction may not at all be the things that get you there. And I think that's where I come back to, I think the key pull in the ground for what I did at Fitbit was this understanding of that. And James Park, giving me the latitude to go out and attack it. So I think we're out of time. Thank you guys. I hope that was helpful.